We got to be in it together. Leland Vittert starts right now.
Great interview all around, Chris, asking some really important questions, at least one of which she did not have an answer to, which was, if he was part of a gang with drugs and rolls of money, why didn't the government charge him?
They released all of them after the stop.
Right.
And look, a lot of this is lawyer gymnastics. Was there a final removal order? Yeah, but it was stayed by the withholding of deportation order. That's why the court ruled 9-0. Yeah. And look, I get it. And I also get the George Floyd element and how this person is being depicted. And I think that's a big part of it also.
That is a great point, which is exactly where we're headed right now. You said the two words, I think, that there is a real element here of sort of made for TV in this. Chris, great show. Thank you. Pick up where Chris left off on this. Today's episode, which is sort of what it is turning into, of the illegal immigrants sent to El Salvador show, included a Democratic U.S. Senator flying to El Salvador for a photo op to demand his return. The mother of a woman killed by an illegal alien at the White House press briefing, and then Trump talking about the mother at an Easter event later.
Yes, her incredible daughter. And her daughter's looking down on Patty today. This was some day for you. And we appreciate it, Patty, and we're all with you 100%. And you are indeed an angel mom.
News of the illegal immigrant's wife once filed an order of protection against him also came out. I could go on, but let me tell you what is really happening and why. Americans elected President Trump for 3 reasons: the border, the economy, and boys and girls sports. That's our Why It Matters memo. The economy is having real problems. It might turn around, but right now, Trump's poll numbers on the economy are crashing. So did the stock market today, but we aren't talking about that tonight. We're actually talking about what Democrats want to talk about and what they are focusing on: the border. And that is the one issue where Donald Trump is winning and winning big. So congratulations, Democrats. You are giving Trump a big win. In a perverse way, the more Democrats and TV networks focus on Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the more the administration has an incentive to keep him in El Salvador. Democrats' obsession with the Maryland man turned Father of the Year candidate shows they learned absolutely nothing from 2024. Today, Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland went to El Salvador to try and bring Abrego Garcia back. He wanted to go to the country's gulag-like prison. The El Salvadorian government didn't let him. Team Trump loves this. Never mind that Van Hollen never cared about a Maryland mom murdered by an illegal immigrant. He never called Rachel Morin's mother. So the White House brought Rachel Morin's mother to the press briefing.
To have a senator from Maryland who didn't even acknowledge or barely acknowledged my daughter and the brutal death that she endured so that he can use my taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to bring back someone that's not even an American citizen. Why does that person have more right than I do?
Senator Cory Booker, he's looking to launch his presidential campaign, seemed far more concerned about Abrego Garcia than he did an American from New Jersey, his home state, imprisoned in Iran. Shi Wang posted on X, "I was a New Jersey resident, Senator Cory Booker's constituent, when I was jailed in Iran as an American hostage. Senator Booker never advocated for my release and refused to speak to my wife. Senator Booker is a hypocrite." He is a politician, which is generally one and the same. But Abrego Garcia is the fight of our time for Democrats and their friends in the media. Republicans couldn't be happier. Much of the anti-Trump media now follows this case the way they did the Iranian hostage crisis. But America does not see this as the Iranian hostage crisis. It is, though, a made-for-TV story. We have a villain, a victim, moral crusaders, and bad guys. And it is all the same cast, but depending on what cable network you are watching, they play different roles.
The Trump administration is banking on is they can take advantage of that sense of normalcy to take away all our liberties. And that is why the fate of Kilmar Abrego Garcia matters to all of us.
He is President Bukele's resident. He is not a Maryland man. He is not a Maryland anything. He is an illegal alien from El Salvador with a deportation order.
So this should be alarming to all of us. Every American citizen could end up in the same situation as Mr. Abrego Garcia if this dangerous course continues.
No, every American could not end up in that situation. Bringing Abrego Garcia home would be the easiest thing in the world for President Trump to do. Literally, it is a phone call or a text message. But he, just like the senators above, is playing to his base because it works politically. The Department of Homeland Security started to put out information making Abrego Garcia seem like a less sympathetic figure. The details include information on his alleged gang affiliation and violent assaults against his wife in 2021. They could have done that a week ago. They didn't because they wanted the information in their back pockets to play this out longer. Team Trump loves this being in the news because we are talking about it. Trump's superpower is making opponents do or say things actively against their best interests. Democrats have never learned. It's like Lucy and the football, except this is the Trump show. With us now, Rumesh Punuo, editor for The National Review, Mark McKinnon, former political advisor, creator, executive producer, and co-host of The Circus on Showtime. Mark, start with you. Trump believes, because he could put an end to this in 30 seconds if he wanted to, that when we're talking about immigration as the press and the country, he is winning regardless of the facts. Is he correct?
Well, you laid it out at the top, Leland. This is the issue. When he went down the stairs at Trump Tower, this is the first thing he talked about. It's the last thing he's going to talk about. It's an incredibly popular issue. It's the one issue on which he is seeing a lot of approval right now while he's facing really difficult economic headwinds. So he loves talking about this issue. He loves the distraction of this issue. And politically, it's a home run. I mean, there are two issues here. There's the political issue, and on that, he is on very firm ground. And if you're going to test an issue of executive authority, this is the hill you want to die on, because you've got incredible support, not only from the base, from the American people. I mean, Democrats, independents across the board think we have. By the way, I worked for George W. Bush 25 years ago when he tried to reform the immigration system. So a quarter of a century we've been working on this, and nothing has been done. In fact, it's much worse than it's ever been, which is a big reason why Trump was elected. So yes, he's going to fight this out. But the other track is the legal track, and that's a whole different question.
Yeah, it is a whole different question. And I really admired Chris for doing that interview where he sort of dove in on some of the facts. And as per usual with the Trump administration, there is a lot of bluster. It is difficult to discern exactly what is legal, what is not, what these rulings are. We won't try to do that here. I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. And I think there's probably a broad number of opinions that can all be right at once. But Ramesh, in that sense, when dealing with the American people are fundamentally good people. They are fundamentally fair people. The Democratic calculus seems to be that this is going to offend Americans' sense of fairness. I think they would have been right in 2017, not in 2025. Do the facts matter here?
Well, I think that the political analysis that Mark and you have both given is broadly correct. I do think this is working better for the president, certainly, than the trade war is working for him. And you can see why, particularly with that backdrop, he wants to talk about this issue. But it's also true that he's not talking about it especially honestly. And you sort of got to that point as well when you said that Trump could switch this off in a moment if he wanted to. It would be the easiest thing in the world for him to get this man back in the United States. Of course, Trump's pretense is that he can't. This is out of his hands.
Right, it's absurd on it. It's absurd on its face for them to say that. But the fact that it's so absurd and they're saying that at least tells me, knowing how the Trump world works, that they want to keep this in the news. They know they're going to have to fight on some political ground because that's the way the media in Washington works and Democrats work attacking Trump. So he'd rather fight about this than anything else. I thought there was a really interesting line from Chris, Mark. He said the George Floyd aspect of this, which is that Democrats have a problem because the more we dig into this guy, he's not the father of the year that's being lionized. There's some real issues, talking of the allegations that he beat his wife, the gang affiliation allegations, which seem to have at least some real validity to them or evidence behind them, whether they've been adjudicated or not is an issue. And it's interesting to me. We haven't heard from his boss. We haven't heard from his pastor. We haven't heard from anybody other than his lawyer and either his wife through statements or very short statements herself about this man that is allegedly turned into a hero by the media.
That's exactly right, Leland. I think that what Chris was saying is that in many sense, like the George Floyd case, this is a Rorschach test for a lot of American people. And depending on which side of the aisle you're on politically, you see what you want to see here, and you invest in this character, the sort of qualities or values that reflect your own. But I do think that as a political issue, you can see how this is something that Trump likes to have on the news, likes the fact we're talking about. But you can also see how, given the circumstances and sort of the things that we're just learning day after day, this could be in the news, a week from now, 30 days from now. It could be in the news for a long, long time, which is exactly where Trump wants it.
Yeah, it's like Groundhog Day. But look, he said it in the 1980s. It's called The Trump Show. It's sold out everywhere. He produced The Apprentice. He produced TV episodes. Bringing out Rachel Morin's mom an hour before the nightly newscast is not an accident. That's just how it works. Ramesh, I want to play for you Senator Van Hollen down in El Salvador. Take a listen.
The case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia does not have to do with MS-13. The Trump administration is paying El Salvador, the government of El Salvador, to keep him at CCOT. The Trump administration is clearly in violation of American court orders.
Only guy in El Salvador wearing a suit right now. Ramesh, you think about this also from the Democrats' perspective, this idea that it's George Floyd-esque, it's a Rorschach test. The Rorschach test is different, I think, than 2020 in that Americans on the border have changed how they feel. The middle of America has moved. Why is Democrats still so obsessed with this? They so want people to be sort of offended by Trump's heavy-handed, if you want to call that, measures, and yet they are not getting the message in the lesson of 2024 that the country's changed.
Well, I think partly it is their own sincere reaction, right? They are themselves on immigration issues to the left of the American public, and they have the reactions that you would expect of that. The other thing which is tricky here about the politics of these issues is it is like George Floyd also in that it all becomes personalized about the main character in this story, right? And so in the George Floyd case, people who were appalled by the police conduct there had to also make George Floyd out as though he were some kind of saint. And then people on the other side wanted to make everything about all the ways he was not, in fact, saintly. Here, everything is being polarized around, is this a good guy, a Maryland father, or is he a gangbanger? But the underlying question of due process that's really important here is not one that lends itself to that kind of political drama. And that's the thing that probably ought to be concerning us more.
Right. Look, the bedrock of America, Mark, is not cable TV episodes or cable TV, as much as I wish it was being on cable television. But your genius in the circus, I think, is picking up where Ramesh left off here. Donald Trump understands that where America is not in the fundamental facts and due process issue. It's the cable TV nature of it.
Well, you said it, Leland. Americans are attracted to a story and a narrative, and that's what Donald Trump is so good at. He's telling a story. And, the Democrats are arguing process, which, of course, is important in due process. And the other side of this ledger is that it's going to run through an official proceeding, and we have a 9-0 ruling from the Supreme Court already. So ultimately, we may have an Andrew Jackson moment here, which is where, the one president in our history who defied the Supreme Court. If Trump were ever going to do it, it might be on, this is the issue he's likely to do it on.
Yeah, and look, Democrats are forcing him into this and creating an issue for him to do it on. So there is that. All right, Mark McKinnon, fantastic analysis. Ramesh Ponnuru, thank you both for being here. Really fantastic. Good to see you both. Comedian, podcaster Tim Dillon tells us why his friend RFK Jr. ought to clear out, you will hear him, fast food restaurant chains with the armed military and how it became in vogue to have a mental health diagnosis.
If you went up to my mother and you were like, Patty, you're a schizophrenic, she'd go, oh, really? Just because they're poisoning my food.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says he knows who is to blame for the lack of information surrounding the rise in autism rates. Today, he criticized his own agency, the CDC.
One of the things that I think that we need to move away from today is this ideology that the autism diagnosis, that the autism prevalence increases, the relentless increases, are simply artifacts of better diagnoses, better recognition, or changing diagnostic criteria.
The facts are very simple. Autism is spiking in America. 1 in 31 children is diagnosed by the time they turn 8. That's up from 1 in 150 in 2000, a 383% increase. When I was diagnosed with what we now know to be autism, that number was 1 in 1,000. RFK Jr.'s push to get some answers about what's causing autism is the first step in reversing this horrible trend. And tonight, we're joined by someone who knows Kennedy well. Comedian Tim Dillon is with us. Host of The Tim Dillon Show, out with a new special called I Am Your Mother, which you can find on Netflix. Wait till the end of this show, though, to search for it. Tim, thank you. It's good to see you. RFK Jr. has been saying this stuff for 20, 30 years. Why is that messaging now resonating so much in the American climate and culture?
I think people recognize that something is off about a lot of the food or the medicine, and I think he's the only person that's commented on that on a national stage. Like, no one else has really brought any of this up, and he's basically the only one talking about it. I think a lot of people seem to instinctively understand that there is something wrong with a lot of what we're told and a lot of what's going on, but we don't really know exactly what it is. So I think he, whatever people think of him, whether they agree or disagree, he's genuinely, concerned about people's health, and he says a lot of the same things that he's been saying for a very long time.
Is there something, though, that the pandemic changed? Because for a long time for the scientific community, it was more important to be pro-vax than it was to acknowledge autism cases were on the rise, because if you asked why they were on the rise, then somehow that was impugning science. And the pandemic sort of beclowned so much of scientists, science, the CDC, NIH, et cetera. Are people now allowed, people even like you as a comedian, allowed to now talk about these issues, kind of poke fun at these issues that are in now the zeitgeist?
I think we were always allowed. I think people, will have different reactions to different things people say. Obviously, I think people are more relaxed now than they were during the pandemic. I think that, we're kind of moving on. I think, people, it was very exhausting for people to constantly be angry all the time and mad. And I think people now are trying to find a little more nuance in things, hopefully. And I think with RFK, like, he really has a background, fighting a lot of like polluters, trying to make water cleaner, air cleaner, trying to make the planet less polluted. And I think he brings a lot of credibility. So a lot of the people that don't love what he says maybe about other topics certainly appreciate, what he says about the environment. I don't agree with him on everything, but I think he's a genuine person who believes what he's saying.
The other issue that he's brought up and now is being discussed as the public health crisis that it is, right, is obesity in America.
Yeah.
Public health epidemic of the highest order. But for a long time, if you talked about obesity directly and what people were eating, it was fat shaming. And it was more important to sort of be accepting and inclusive than it was to be factual about what happened. We heard him talk today about what autism is doing, and I think this is probably more about severe autism, to so much of America. Take a listen.
Autism destroys families. More importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children. These are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem. They'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted.
That's true for the more severe cases of autism. We now know is a large spectrum. But again, you used to not talk about those kinds of things. It was sort of everything was behind a closed door. You found an enormous amount of success in having these very frank conversations on your podcast, in your specials. Why is it okay now?
Well, I mean, in fairness, I would say, the pendulum tends to swing back to rational behavior most of the time because, like I said, I think people get exhausted by pretending things aren't the case. I mean, Michelle Obama tried to do a healthy lunch initiative, but again,
yeah, that didn't work.
She ran up against people that were kind of against her being critical of people's bodies and whatnot. People thought it was an attack, like you said. I think people now are realizing that in order to get through this, we're going to have real conversations, and people are not always going to like it, but that's okay. I think RFK is not going far enough with food. I think he should, go into fast food restaurants with the military and shut them down. I think he should take people off the line at Chick-fil-A at gunpoint. But, he hasn't done that yet. That would certainly help me. That would help many people I know. So I hope he goes further.
When you say help you specifically, tell me what you mean.
Well, if I was going to go to Taco Bell, but I knew that RFK would be there with the military, I might think twice about it.
So in other words, you would want him to pry the cheesy gordita crunch from your cold, dead hands.
Cold, soon-to-be dead hands, if you listen to him, yes.
Okay, and why don't you think he's doing that?
Well, here's the deal. Nestle probably has more power than the CIA. I mean, he's up against some very big, well-funded players that have been funding, a lot of the body positivity stuff is funded by the junk food industry, and they want people eating stuff, and they want, the standards to be relaxed and things like that. So, I mean, these are mega multinational conglomerates with a lot of money who are very well-funded, and he's got his work cut out for him. It's going to be really hard.
The other thing that he's been very outspoken about is SSRIs, antidepressant medicines in the pharmaceutical industry. You make a big point to talk openly, not only about your issues with mental health, but your mother's as well on your specials. Take a listen.
I know anxiety and depression are bad. I get it. I've had them. I know they're bad. But you have them. You'll tell people. You'll go, I'm depressed. And they go, that sucks. If you went up to my mother and you were like, Patty, you were schizophrenic, she'd go, oh, really? Just because they're poisoning my food.
Do we have a danger in America now of making it almost in vogue to have a diagnosis?
Yes, I think there's a lot of people that are going to cynically exploit the climate that we're in now, which is more aware of mental health issues, which is ultimately good that we're more aware of them, but there are people that are going to be diagnosing themselves because they watched a TikTok or using these things cynically to, advance themselves or to, create some type of personality. So absolutely, I think there's a danger to that. there's also a danger to listening only to pharmaceutical companies who have a huge interest in the profit model of people being sick. And I think that you have to listen to a bunch of different people. I don't think you should only listen to for-profit pharmaceutical companies who have a financial interest in more and more and more people. And I'm not against people being on medicine. I'm not against people being helped by medicine. But I think that you cannot trust always the drug dealer who has an interest in giving you drugs.
Well, as we say in Washington, follow the money. That works almost everywhere in the world. Tim, stay right there. One more topic we want to get your opinion on when we come back is cancel culture officially canceled, and whether that really is a good thing. Special covering everything from politics, cancel culture, and more. A little bit of the preview.
You podcasters think you've inherited the kingdom.
Hold on, I'm gonna have to call you back.
Whispering in ears, swaying elections, spinning the truth like it was cotton candy, when in fact, you're nothing but a bunch of clowns juggling boner pills and hair tonic.
Quite the visual. Kevin Spacey is now back, uncanceled.
He helped us do a promo for the special, and he was acquitted in a criminal trial and a civil trial. And he's a talented guy, and that was Netflix's first hit show.
Yeah.
So we had
House
him
of
on.
Cards.
Yeah.
But in a larger sense, like, and we've heard this, right? That sort of Me Too is over, the cancel culture is over. Is that proof of it?
Well, listen, I don't know if him doing a promo for my special is proof of it, but again, I think
come on, you're a big deal, man. Huge.
Oh, that's very sweet of you.
Yeah.
I think that people are tired. People are just tired of, like, banishing people. People are imperfect. They're flawed. They make mistakes. We're all human beings. I think people are a little tired of, like, just holding people up to a magnifying glass and going, I'm going to exile that person from society. I think that makes no sense.
I think about the end of cancel culture, and people, you make some great points. But then I think about my mother, and granted, I was sort of brought up with a stiff upper lip, the idea that you behave in certain ways, you dress certain ways, all of that kind of stuff. Has there been a sort of degradation of the culture to the point that there's no standards at all anymore?
Well, certainly I think we've made individualism into a sacrament, and maybe our highest, holiest sacrament is that you should pursue what is good for you all the time. And I think often that comes at the expense of the collective. So I think that, for example, there are other values in society other than maximizing the amount of freedom everyone has. I love freedom. Everyone wants freedom. But, you also need a functioning civil society. You need people to adopt certain standards. You don't want people living on the street. You don't want people using drugs in front of your children. You want safety. You want a climate where you can have a business. You want these things. And, in a lot of great American cities, you've seen, certainly the downtowns be, taken over by kind of this very sad and unfortunate, lawless, chaotic, reality that is preventing people from having a business and, walking their kids to school. So, yeah, I think that we need, unfortunately, to have certain standards and agree on certain things.
Yeah, which sort of in the name of compassion, at some point, we sort of let everybody be you, and some people being them may not be the best thing. According to a new Yale youth poll, a survey affiliated with the Yale Institute for Social and Political Studies, voters aged 18 to 21 lean Republican by 11 points when who they would support in the 2026 congressional elections. And that is exactly the opposite of everything we've seen, because normally the youth vote is overwhelmingly Democratic. And the older 20 demographic, overwhelmingly Democratic. It's that young group, 18 to 23-year-olds. What's happening with the kids?
the Democrats are taking the blame for COVID, and I think that's not wrong. I think a lot of these kids couldn't go to a prom, and they had to do like drive-by birthday parties, and some of them couldn't say goodbye to their grandparents. They had to say goodbye through like a plastic bag or something, and I think they're angry about that. And I think the party in power is getting, during that time is getting the blame for that. I also think that, kids want to have fun. I think Donald Trump is fun. I think he's more fun. I think that, you have a party right now that on the left that needs to rediscover how to just be a little bit more fun and exciting and not be scolding people. And, I think they're getting there, but I think they're not quite there yet.
Tim, there will be people who say, why do you have a comedian on the show? And I answered it in War Notes earlier. I said, because people who do what you do, which is an incredible skill, have an understanding of the human equation and where culture is going. Politics is always downstream of culture. You help us understand the culture. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I don't know if that's true, but I hope it is.
I say it's true. Look, it's my show. If I say it's true here, right? Everybody gets their own truth right now. All right. Tim, thank you very much. All right. His new special, I'm Your Mother, out now on Netflix. Democrats want the party to move more to the center, but progressive lawmaker AOC just raised $9 million. Are Democrats ready to address their identity crisis?
I don't think this is Trump country. I think this is our country.
The Kilmar-Abrego Garcia case, the fight of our time. When their plan inevitably fails to sink Trump, we know it will because Signalgate didn't sink Trump, nor did Doge. Democrats will turn back to scare tactics about Social Security. They say Trump is gutting the program. Trump says he's not. He will protect Social Security. It is an incredibly important issue to so many of you, and we know that because we heard from a lot of you about this issue after our segment last night with Martin O'Malley. When you say threat to Social Security, if there's one thing Donald Trump has been Sherman-esque about, is he's not going to touch Social Security, and that
he already has.
No, hold on. He's not going to touch benefits. There's two things. He's not going to touch benefits.
7,000 people out of Social Security, man. Where have you been? Is your head in the sand? There are lines outside of Social Security offices.
Sue writes, I love your show. It makes me think. I was watching the discussion regarding Social Security tonight, and your guest had some valid points. The administration may not be cutting benefits, but they are making it almost impossible to access. People in my state of South Dakota had trouble with access before all the cuts, right, under Democrats. And that's exactly the point, Sue. The Trump administration is making cuts at the agency, but the president has promised over and over again to keep benefits intact. Democrats want voters to look at the two things the same. They are not. CNBC reports that Democratic senators are pressing the Social Security Administration on reports of dangerous employee cuts. Democrats know millions of Americans depend on Social Security, as do we. Without Social Security, millions of our fellow citizens don't eat. It is a sacred promise. We owe that to people. So scaring Americans about Social Security works.
Social Security is more than a government program. It's a sacred promise.
Musk's Doge, or whatever that thing is putting benefits at risk, and Republicans in Congress want to end Social Security as we know it.
Hands off our Medicaid, hands off our Social Security.
Assaulting the Social Security Administration right now is totally unjustified. Actually, what we should be doing is improving the effectiveness and efficiency of the agency.
That is something Democrats never did, was improving the effectiveness and efficiency of the agency. The Social Security Administration has never been a paragon of efficiency. It is a government agency. Wait times have fluctuated over the years. Staffing and backlogs have plagued the program. So maybe reform actually isn't so bad. Could actually help people in the end. At Roll Tide, Ricky says your conversation with whatever governor that was, spot on. You asked questions and he sidestepped every one of them. The only thing happening with Social Security is cutting the wasteful spending, and these Democrats hate it. Actually, Rick, Democrats have for years called for making cuts to bloated federal agencies, Obama, Biden, Clinton, the list goes on. What they really hate is that Trump is doing it. Few things matter to voters like Social Security. It should be a zero-fail mission. If Trump and crew screw up sending out checks, it will be Trump's Afghanistan. Democrats will never let them forget it, and it will be difficult, if not impossible, to ever recover from. Much more about this story in War Notes. That's your chance for an inside look at the show every day. It is free, warnotes.com to subscribe. You will be delighted, smarter, and impress your friends when you get the email every day. Warnotes.com, at Leland Vittert on social media. Wrote about this a little bit today. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez keeps bringing in huge crowds and big money. Conventional wisdom says Democrats need to move to the center. No more pronoun politics. But if conventional wisdom was right, we would have had President Hillary Clinton in 2008, Jeb Bush in 2016, Cory Booker in 2020, and anybody but Trump in 2024. Truth is, conventional wisdom is usually wrong. Cortez and sidekick Bernie Sanders keep drawing tens of thousands, even in deep red states. In the past months, they have raised a combined total of $21 million. Here's AOC in Montana slamming Trump and what she calls his billionaire friends.
They all have one central economic mission: to make billionaires richer at the expense of the rest of us. So it does not surprise us that their first economic mission has been to target Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security.
With us now, Laura Brownstein, former spokesperson for women and consumer media on the Harris campaign. Laura, welcome to the show. Is AOC the future of the Democratic Party?
I think good fighters are the future of the Democratic Party. And AOC is certainly a good fighter. And Cory Booker has been a good fighter recently. And we're seeing Americans fighting back right now in so many different ways. They're turning up for marches. They are donating small dollar amounts. They are, you want to hear an interesting stat? Run for Something, which works with millennials and Gen Zs to run for office. 40,000 people have signed up to consider a run for office.
Hold on, I want to ask you, because it's a fascinating statistic, but what you're saying I think is two important but maybe different things. Important but different things. Is this about fighting back or fighting for something? Which one do Democrats need to be doing?
Yes. Yes. I think we need to be doing both, Leland, and I think...
Yeah, but you got to prioritize one. Barack Obama didn't fight back. He fought for something. Bill Clinton didn't fight back. He fought for something. Donald Trump didn't fight back. He fought for something. That's what movement politicians do. John Kennedy, pick your great president. Reagan, they fight for things.
AOC doesn't have a vision that she's fighting for, and Cory Booker had 25 hours of material he was fighting for. I think that people are clear that they want more assurance than they do now, that they have now around Medicare, Medicaid, and as you just discussed, Social Security. They like due process.
Trump has promised on all three of those to not cut them, but I know Democrats have a different feeling about that. Run for Something has a corollary in David Hogg, vice chair of the DNC. He's the kid who became famous after Parkland.
Not connected,
talking about Parkland. He says, as vice chair of the DNC, he's also going to spend a bunch of money that he's raised to try and oust, you might call them establishment Democrats. Take a listen.
There are older people who are meeting this moment, and there are younger people who are not meeting this moment, and vice versa. If you are an effective leader and you're listening to this right now and you're a member of Congress, you have nothing to be worried about. And if this brings you anxiety, you should ask yourself why that is, because there are young people out there ready to meet this moment.
I don't know what that means. Do you?
I can't speak to exactly what he is saying. I do think that we see all of the energy behind some of the younger people in the party, behind AOC, behind Max Frost. But Data for Progress did a study that came out, I think yesterday or today, that the Dems with the highest favorability right now are Obama, Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, Tim Walz, Cory Booker, and Hillary Clinton. That's a pretty mixed group. of not that.
Yeah, I mean, but if you think
progressive.
about, it's mixed, but is that just because of they're well known?
Or because all of those people have been speaking out and fighting in the last couple of weeks. I think people are really connecting to the fighters, both elected and not elected, who are pushing back, who are saying, hi, the price of eggs are twice what it was a few months ago. Like, AOC is
I'm
out
sure
there
the price
talking
of
about
eggs are
kitchen table
down, but I understand your point. If we had more time, I would talk to you about whether they should be fighting about the economy or Abrego Garcia, which is what we started the show with. But that will have to wait till the next time you're on. This was a great conversation. We will have you back. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was awesome. One thing you're going to be talking about tomorrow when we come back, I'll tell you why you really care about the Italian Prime Minister's meeting with Donald Trump. Coming to America to meet with Donald Trump. And this is going to be one of the first tests to see if the tariff gamble by Trump is really working. If there is some big deal with Italy announced, that is going to give a lot of credence to Donald Trump's argument that he is getting better deals for America and can isolate China. Why does that matter to you? Just look at your 401k.